Greetings, this is Chris Ruby, the Nostalgic Catholic, with another Isaac Asimov short story. In this case, you will notice I'm merely holding up the book into which it was collected, Nightfall and Other Stories. In this case, I do not have the original release of it, or even pictures of the original release of it, even though it's merely a fantasy and science fiction magazine. April 1959. Apparently that issue seems to be hard to find and very expensive when you can. But in my experience, when you have that book or that magazine, the stories are seldom much different at all. Maybe a typographical error or maybe an italicization of something or other. That would be about it. Very, very little difference. No artwork unless you already get the cover, and that almost never happens too. And in fact, I haven't seen it yet, so probably it doesn't have it here either. And like I said, there's no other artwork in there. It might be a small blurb, which I would like to see, but that's all we're going to miss. At any rate, I'm sure there's nothing consequentially different in the story itself. Now, in this Nightfall book, he does talk a little bit about how he got the idea. His kindly editor, as he called him, who was the editor of fantasy and science fiction, he calls him kindly editor. Over lunch one day, he said he'd seen the name Lewkowitz on several different and unrelated occasions that day, which struck him as a curious coincidence. Could I make a story of it? In my usual offhand manner, I said, "Oh, sure." I gave it a little thought. The result was a story that served as a tribute to Mr. Boucher, too. He was, you see, a devout Catholic. I say was, for he died April 1968. This book is published 1969. To the heartfelt grief of all who knew him. He was so kind a man that he was loved by the very authors he rejected, which even while he was rejecting them, and there simply isn't a harsher test of true love than that. And because he was a sincere Catholic, there was often a faintly Catholic air about fantasy and science fiction under his leadership. So I thought, as my tribute to Mr. Boucher's editorship, I would try my hand at that kind of flavor myself. I couldn't handle it in a Catholic fashion, of course, for I am not Catholic, so I did it the only way I could manage, and I wrote a Jewish story, which goes well with the name Lewkowitz anyway. Okay, the only Jewish story it ever occurred to me to write, I think. And I made Mr. Mills' remark about Lewkowitz become unto the fourth generation. So here you've got this guy. He's getting started in his business life. I guess he's got a girl to be engaged to. He's got things to look forward to. And he keeps seeing various forms of this Lewkowitz and Levkovich, not quite, Lewkowitz, but then he sees another form of it. He sees that there's a Lewkowitz in the building he's going to, and then there's a Lewkowitz importer, but with spelled a little bit different. He's supposed to be Levkovich. So he keeps running into all of this. He has some kind of a job interview, but his mind is not really on it. He's trying to look for Lefkovit. No, he's trying to go with a V there. And he doesn't know what to do. So finally, he's just got to get away from it all. He's in New York City. A lot of Jews in New York. And, it's a place for Jews in a way. I mean, the island of Manhattan, or at least a big chunk of it, has got this giant wire all the way around it, just as a kind of an area within which kosher Jews can all function, even on the Sabbath, without going outside, in some crude sense, their area or their property. So, they really have a lot of interesting things there that you don't normally see in other places. So you have all these Jews here, and this is undeniably a very, very Jewish story. He wanders into Central Park, and he sees this old man in shabby clothes, and so I kind of worn my shabbies in commemoration of that. It doesn't noticeably seem so. And he sees this old man, and the old man turns out to be Levkovich, and it's spelled exactly the way it needs to be. And the old man knows about him. The main guy's named Samuel Marten. It's a T-E-N at the end. Not Shmuel or Shmuel or something, but Samuel. Maybe just a little echo of that is Shmuel. Samuel. Wow, I can't quite get it. Anyway, it says here, under the Samuel was a unheard shadow of Shmuel. I kind of like it when you have the Jewish forms, like instead of Simon, Shmuel, it's kind of, it's Shmuel, okay. But the old man has these rough, vague hands, and he's talking about how he was looking for his descendants. See, he had been this name, Phineas ben Jedudah. He was given the name Levkovich by the ukase of Tsar. He was obviously coming from Russia, and ordered family names for all. And we were here because I prayed. I was already old. Leah, my only daughter, the child of my old age, left for America with her husband, left the knouts of old for the hope of the new. And my sons died, and Sarah, the wife of my bosom, was long dead, and I was alone. The time came that I too must die. But I had not seen Leah since her leaving for that far country. Now he's in Manhattan. And word had come but rarely. My soul yearned that I might see sons born unto her, sons of my seed, sons in whom my soul might yet live and not die. I think that's really something. And then he sat down on this park bench. He was looking, and then Samuel Marten came up. And, it is well, Father, now that I have found thee, he says. Give me thy best blessing, that it may dwell with me all the days of my life, and with the maid whom I undertake to wife, and the little ones yet to be born of my seed and thine. So, he's not a very rich man. He was lucky to make it all the way here at all, in the poverty and rags that he lived in. But he lived a good, honest, upright life, in accordance with the Jewish standards. And now he just wanted to do one last thing, which is to be able to give his paternal blessing to his descendants. A simple thing. Jacob / Judah in the Bible does that to all the various, not Judah, Jacob does that to all the various sons, including Judah and Benjamin and Levi and Joseph and all these other different sons that, he gets to bless before he goes to be gathered with his people. And that's how it says in the Bible, by the way. So it's a very strongly entrenched custom. A really good story. It's kind of actually, kind of moved me in a way. It was just a simple thing. He could give his blessing, and the younger man could receive the blessing. And that was it. Very atypical for Asimov. I don't know. And then at the end of it all, he was just getting out of a cab, and this whole exploration had happened. And then, after that's over, he's still getting out of that cab. Like, was this a flight of his imagination? Was this some going down a different time path or something? You could categorize it as science fiction or fantasy. It goes either way. I'm going to say just fantasy because it's not like there's some gadget. It's really just a kind of a very deep, unspoken wish fulfillment, which is in a way kind of the best kind. I really respect that story, and there are definitely some customs that I think are definitely worth remembering, and being able to really give your children a blessing, a real blessing that means something, is meant to stay with them through their lives as they go on, and convey something of yourself that makes you ready to go to your maker as they must go on with their lives. It's really good. Very extraordinary story in his own way, and just so atypical of all of his other short stories. Anyway, so you don't have to be Jewish to appreciate it, but well, I'm sure that would still help. It's probably his one chance. He's thinking of the late Anthony Boucher, who had been that. But I see in some of that maybe also honoring, the memories of his parents, who were very serious and very devout, and in their Judaism. And I don't know if they were still alive at that point in time, but I can see a sense of that as well. That in a nutshell is Unto the Fourth Generation. And thank you for listening.